Hello, everyone. I'm John Evans. Welcome to another episode of One-on-One. Much of Mike Oblinger's life has involved college sports. He played basketball at Monmouth University, and then after graduation, he started working in fundraising and athletic administration. As he climbed the job ladder, Mike worked at some pretty big-time universities: Ohio State, Nevada, Memphis, LSU, and then UConn, where he worked alongside administrators and coaches who won several national championships. Mike reached the top rung of the ladder last year when Chancellor Aswani Valeti hired him to be the new athletic director at UNC Wilmington. Now, Mike Oblinger is trying to take Seahawk athletics to the next level by making sure that the front porch is in great shape. Mike Oblinger, thanks for your time. Welcome to the One-on-One podcast.
Great to be with you, John. Thanks for having me.
Take me back to the day you found out that they wanted you to be the athletic director at UNCW. How did you find out? What were your emotions when you did find out?
Oh, wow. Great question. Obviously emotions, super excited. Something that we had obviously been striving for throughout, all the stops and all the careers and all the ladder climbing. Actually, I found out on an airplane. I was actually working at UConn at the time. I was on a flight from Connecticut to Florida. And as I was getting on the flight, they said, "Hey, heads up, you might be getting a call from the chancellor." And I said, "Well, the next 2+ hours I'm going to be in an airplane. I'll see if I have Wi-Fi connectivity." So ultimately, I learned that they were going to offer me this job, 30,000 feet in the air via text, and I probably looked a little crazy on the plane as I'm celebrating. You know what I mean? I was doing a little bit of this, and obviously I received great news. And then Aswani and I talked. When I got on the ground, and so that's ultimately how I found out that they were going to offer me the job.
Okay, you obviously called your wife Liz, let her know about it, but who's the first person other than her that you called to say they picked me?
Yeah, obviously, Liz, of course, and she was as excited as I was to come. I called Dave Benedict, my athletic director at UConn. Because really not necessarily tell him I was leaving, but because he was a mentor and he was very helpful in getting me here. Obviously 6+ years with him at UConn, but getting me ready for the job, getting me ready for this, getting me ready for the interview, giving me straight, honest, what it's like to be an athletic director. So he was that second call after Liz got it.
Chancellor Valeti said that when you came in, you went to a basketball game and you immediately started giving feedback. What is working well? What is not working well? Did you look at that as like a test, or was that just, this is what you're going to get with Mike Oblinger if you bring him in as athletic director?
Yeah, John, a little bit of both. So go back to February when I interviewed. I came in a day early. That night, men's basketball played A&T. And I didn't tell anyone I was going. I just walked up, bought a ticket, and I wanted to have the whole experience. So coming onto campus, what does that look like? What does parking look like? How do people get in and out of the building? How do you buy a ticket? How do you get welcome? How do you buy a hot dog? I mean, where's the restroom? I wanted to get a really full experience of what it was like to come as a fan, as a again, just someone off the street wanting to go to a men's basketball game on a Thursday night. And so, kind of had a dress as a civilian, had a hat on, kind of just, again, incognito, kind of moving around a little bit through Trask.
Right.
Really, A, I wanted to experience it, but 2, I knew if I was going to get hired, I wouldn't be able to have a game day experience until the following, late October, early November. And so, again, I wanted to experience it because if we were going to make some tweaks and some changes, I wanted to spend all summer doing that, again, versus doing it on the fly when we were getting going. So, again, I just wanted to come observe. We were doing a lot of things right, that's for sure, because, thinking about that Thursday versus A&T, it was kind of rainy. It was cold. A&T wasn't great at the time. And the place was 80% full. You know what I mean? So it was one of those things where I'm looking around being like, golly, what does this place look like, when all the things align, in our favor. So, I took some notes down, and I think that helped me show the university, show the chancellor that, I'm willing to come in. Obviously I've got some experiences at high profile basketball places that do the in game, the fan experience at a high level. And that's part of hiring me, would be obviously bringing those experiences along down to Wilmington.
They call them fans, but do you, as athletic director, have to almost think of them as your customers rather than just fans for your program?
100%. John, we have to earn their discretionary dollars. And so it's this day and age in live sports, it's more than just what's going on the court, the field, the competition venue. It's everything else around. It's what am I eating? What's the availability of food? What do drinks look like? Can I get can I get something from the team shop for my kid? Right? I mean, it's all about the in-game, constant entertainment. I said that the first thing I did when we came in here is that, again, we have to earn the fans' dollar. We have to earn the attention of this town if we're going to have success. And so whether we're talking about men's or women's basketball, whether we're talking about baseball at Brooks or soccer, during the fall, like, we've got to be really, really intentional with everything that we do. I'm really mindful of that, obviously, with a young family. If I'm going to spend time going out to a ball game, I obviously want to have a great experience for a family, but too, are we providing a wonderful value that someone that may or may not go to school here or have a relationship here, and if you come onto this campus for one time and you have a bad experience, we might not get you back.
Right.
So we've got one opportunity to make a great impression, and we're very thoughtful with what that impression looks like.
That's how I've looked at what I do. I have to earn that invitation into people's homes every night, or on their smart devices, or on their iPads. And people would always say, well, they're going to turn you on anyway. Well, not necessarily. You have to earn that invitation, and it's good from my vantage point, because that's been my belief in what I do, to hear you say that same thing.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, think about all the different things someone could do on Thursday night at 7:00. And there's a lot of reasons why not to come to a men's basketball game or come onto campus for a sporting event. And so, we're really intentional with that. We're constantly surveying, right? We put surveys out at the end of the year for basketball. We put a survey out at the end of the year for baseball to say, hey, listen, what are we doing right? What are we doing wrong? And what do you want to see?
College athletics is a lot different than when you played at Monmouth years ago. Well, not that many years ago, but let's just say years ago and leave it at that, okay? You've got the transfer portal now. You've got NIL. In North Carolina, you've got now legalized betting on sports. If anyone ever had a doubt that college athletics is a business, what's happened in the last 10 years has really kind of solidified that in my mind. Am I off base there, or am I right?
No, John, I think you're right. A couple different ways to think about it is college athletics is a business, even before all the things you mentioned, portal, NIL, sports wagering, all those types of things. Because ultimately, if we don't drive revenue, we can't provide our student athletes with the experience that we want to, right? And so, when I got into this business, we were talking about, again, donations, people buying tickets, people sponsoring, and those are obviously very still much part of the equation for us. But now, how do we provide even more benefits to student athletes? NIL, you talk about the transfer portal. I think for us, the transfer portal is an additive thing for us. We're highly attractive as it relates to recruiting, and so I think we've done very, very well in the portal. Our coaches that have leaned in are seeing success because, I think if you looked across the landscape of college athletics, older teams are more competitive.
Right.
I mean, that's just a reality of it. And so, whether we talk about this latest cycle with Coach Siddle and Coach Woods and how they've bolstered their roster, men's tennis, graduated an awful lot of kids coming off 4 championships. Well, Mate goes out and gets into the portal, and he's got an older roster, almost as old as he did last year, in some respects. Yeah. And so, I think it's an advantage for us. I think we need to lean into it. And I understand why, traditional people, when they think about the amateur model, when they think about college sports and someone being here 4 to 5 years, unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. But ultimately for us, we need to lean into it. For us to put our head in the sand and saying we're not going to take portal kids, or we're not going to be involved with NIL or anything like that, I think our competitiveness will suffer if we took that attitude.
Is it better for the college athlete now? I would think so. Again, tell me yes or no.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I think about, back when I was a student athlete, there were so many rules, restrictions in terms of what an institution could offer. Even providing meals. I mean, even as simple as saying, hey, is this a snack or is this a meal? When I was a student athlete, well, now they've kind of gone away from that. And so an institution can provide a whole lot more benefits, right? This past August, the NCAA brought on what's called a holistic model. So there's some things for us to be able that we have to provide, whether it's mental health care, additional academic support when they leave, some health care requirements for us. Again, if you sustain an injury here, once you graduate and once you leave, it's not a situation where we say bye-bye and we just put you off into the community and have so we've got some responsibility to these young people when they leave. And so I think that's healthy. I think that makes total sense. On top of obviously providing a quality education, room and board, again, as the NCAA has relaxed restrictions on what we can do for them, I think that's a healthy thing across the board for all of our student athletes.
There's always talk, Mike, when people say that, you look at now the Pac-12 is trying to get Mountain West teams, and you've got two schools from California now part of conferences on the East Coast. You're in the business. You played. Is there going to be, in the next 5 or 10 years, 4 major conferences and that's it? What is the future of college athletics? Are all of these leagues like the CAA, like the Pac-12, are they all going to survive?
John, I do. I ultimately think, the NCAA obviously is going through the House settlement right now. Part of that deal is keeping D1 intact for a proposed 10 years, right? So that's going to stabilize ultimately what we know of as Division I athletics, and I think that's a positive. As it relates to, conference moving, do I think the Big Ten should have teams from coast to coast? Probably not. That's probably not, again, if you think about traditional college sports, one of the neat things about it is rivalries and regionals. And, I came from an institution that left a league that was pretty spread out in the American and got back into the Big East and more regional, more comfortable fans identified more with the institutions. So again, that really helped that institution grow. And so I'm mindful of conference realignment. It's something that obviously is out there every single day in the news. All we can control is being the very best UNCW. We're very proud members of the CAA. I really enjoy our league. I love our competitiveness in the league. And so, will it look different in 5 years? No doubt, across the board.
At UConn, you had the chance to see some pretty successful people at what they do. Gino Auriemma, Dan Hurley, and Dave Benedict. What did you learn from witnessing how they did things and how they were able to succeed at what they did?
All three of them, John, great question. All three of them, obviously at the top of their field, ultra successful. I would say the thing that they all have in common is the ability to interact and build relationships with people, right? And they all do it different ways, right? And they're all obviously in different spots in their career. Where Gino's at the top of the mountain and been there 11 championships, and he's been the head coach there, approaching 40 years. And Dan coming in, inherited a program that was really kind of on a rough patch. Dave Benedict has been all across the country, been at big institutions, little institutions. And so, obviously working for him, I got to see really the behind the scenes of what it took to be an AD. Truthfully, when I went to UConn, I didn't really know if that was something that I wanted to do. Because again, you don't really quite know what this job is like until you sit in the seat. You don't quite have an understanding of the role. And so the ability to watch David do it for 6 years, again, I wouldn't be here without him, first of all, hiring me at UConn, but then obviously, giving me more to do and helping me grow and enabling me to be around coaches like Gino and Dan on a daily basis. But I will tell you that Dan and Gino are obviously two different personalities, which is great, because it makes it fun. I would say, Gino's probably a little bit more easygoing, and Dan obviously is pretty fiery and he pushes constantly. But obviously at the top of their field, they're dynamic coaches. UConn is grateful to have both of them for sure.
When you got into athletic administration, and I know the story is that you kind of got into it almost by accident, but did you realize how much fundraising was a part of it? I mean, you played college athletics, you went and got your master's and wanted to get into athletic administration, but many people don't know, I don't think, how much fundraising really has to do in the whole process.
Yeah, I had no idea what it was when I got into it. And so, you're right, kind of got into this, a little bit by accident, and got right advice at the right time. Early on in grad school, I had a mentor, had an advisor, and I said, hey, listen, I want to get into this. I don't quite know what it looks like. And that person said, hey, getting to know you a little bit, you might try fundraising. Go talk to this person on campus. Go ask him if you could shadow him. Go ask him if you can ask him some questions. And I did that and really just said, yeah, I think I could probably do that. I think more often than not, as a fundraiser, the question that I got of people that didn't quite know what we did was, well, I could never ask for money. I thought asking for money was the easy part. I always just kind of, that was the end. That was the easy part. The difficult was obviously building relationships, and really listening intently and finding out what the donor wanted to help with. That was the hard part, as it relates to just, hey, building that relationship, building that trust, getting to know the donor, having an understanding of what they want to do on campus. And really, it's almost like a puzzle, you know what I mean, in some ways, because, everyone's interests are different. And every institution that I've been to, we were just donor centric, similar to the way we are here, is that, whatever you want to get involved with, we're going to lean into that. If you like tennis, we're going to talk about tennis. If you like basketball or baseball, we're going to talk about that. You want to help with a scholarship, we were going to talk about that. And so that's what made it fun. And ultimately, by the end of it, you kind of knew what someone was going to do, whether they were going to say yes or no. And so you kind of, because again, you built that relationship over time. I think being a fundraiser has helped me with the AD job. And anytime I talk about this role with young people trying to get in, I say, try fundraising, because it's going to help you, because the relationships that I was developing as a young fundraiser, as a chief development officer, like those are all very helpful to me now. Right. So if I'm talking to, a big donor, if I'm talking to a little donor, if I'm talking to a board of trustee member, if I'm talking to somebody on campus, if I'm talking to an alum, former student athlete, I have experience in all of that. And whether we're talking about fundraising or if we're just talking about, just general things about the department, I'm pretty comfortable in dealing with those types of conversations.
You were born in Maine, grew up in Chicago. What did Mike want to do as a teenager? I imagine athletics were high on the list. You went to Monmouth, played hoops, but what was the family like, and what did Mike have aspirations and dreams when he was a teenager before he went to college?
Oh, God, I'm sure it probably had something to do with playing basketball professionally. I think that was, probably that dream at some point, and then, you kind of realize that, that's not part of the equation, and the ball will stop bouncing at some point for me. And so, I thought about coaching, probably in high school, I probably had a thought about, hey, if I got into like high school teaching and coaching, because sports was always part of who we were. And growing up as a kid, it was everything, right? If you're in the fall, you're playing football. If, winter basketball, then you did baseball, track, soccer, and that was obviously an important component of my life, as well as my sister. And so really, we grew up in a house where it was, the family calendar was kind of like the sports calendar in a lot of ways. And so, getting into school, again, I was on the history of political science track. I wanted to be a lawyer, and that was great. Again, wanted to do that and very passionate about it, but, really probably soon realized that probably sports had to play a role with me going forward in some capacity, and so, you kind of take that information, then you start to kind of work through and say, okay, well, what do you want to do with your sports career? Because there's a lot of different things you could possibly do. You could get into a lot of different areas within, sports, whether it's college, professional, and obviously, like I told you before, got good advice and got on this path, and, here we are.
Are your parents Seahawk fans? I know they're out there in the Charlotte area. This was a good move for you geographically. But are they now Seahawk fans, or are they still maybe Monmouth fans or Panther fans? What do they root for?
They're all in on the Seahawks. And they follow, all of us on all of our social media channels, Facebook, all that. So they're pretty much up on it. They time their visits over this way when we have home matches or competitions and so forth. So, coming here for this job was obviously a great thing for me professionally. But man, when you realize how close it is to family, it was just icing on the cake, and it just made us want the job even more. And I think we've been here about 18 months, year and a half or so, and my kids have been able to see them twice as much as we were in the 6 months prior, or 6 years prior to UConn. So, again, that was a huge piece of us coming here, but they're very much Seahawk fans. Whenever I talk to them, they're always, I saw you guys were doing this, or, saw this on Facebook, or I saw this video, or, how'd they convince you to do that? What were you thinking doing that little video? So they're definitely tracking on us.
Well, as a grandfather, let me tell you, I know they're happier that you're only 4 hours away rather than 6 or 7 hours away. Having 2 grandkids in Raleigh and one now in Richmond instead of being in Pennsylvania, where my daughter and her husband were for a while. I'm glad they're only 4 hours away. I know your folks are glad that your kids are only 4 hours away.
They certainly are. Mm-hmm.
How did you and your wife meet? Was it college? Did you know each other before college?
No, it was at Monmouth. Yeah. So she grew up in a small little town outside of Monmouth, probably 45 minutes away. And she was a year ahead of me in school. So we met when I was a first year. She was a sophomore. She's a cheerleader. So kind of your traditional student athlete cheerleader, type of interaction there. And so my roommate was a football player my first year, and started dating a cheerleader. And so that's ultimately how we started to be around each other socially. And that wasn't by accident, John. I was trying to be around her as much as I could. That probably would have told me that, I was a good salesman or a good fundraiser, because she was way out of my league then. She's way out of my league now. And truth be told, and she'll tell you this story too, the first couple of times I asked her out, she told me no. I was awfully persistent, and ultimately, she said yes, and the rest is history. So,
is she a sports fan, or is she a sports fan through you? If she's a cheerleader, obviously she knew about the game, but is she a true sports fan?
I think that's been something she's grown into a little bit. I don't think she grew up in the house that sports kind of dictated the schedule quite like I did growing up. Obviously a cheerleader, so she was around it, a bunch through, growing up in high school and obviously in college. And so, I think when I first told her that, hey, I want to get into this college athletics thing, I think she probably didn't quite understand the complexity of it, or the size of it. You grow up in a small town, you really don't have access to, big pro sports or those types of things. And so, I think for her, it really clicked when we got to LSU. And just kind of saw the scale and the size, and really the importance of what a state institution provides, whether it's, obviously you show up to a football game or show up to a competition, but really how important sports are, specifically at LSU as an example, to the fabric of the community, or you go to UConn, same thing. You come here, and UNCW athletics is a huge part of the community. So I think she's really understood how important that role is. She's leaned in. She has our calendar. She knows our schedule. First of all, she's around, a lot. Her and the kids are as involved as I am in coming to competitions and whatnot. And so we make it a family affair. And so I think that's helped her, kind of really fully understand kind of what this job is and really how important it is.
Your first 6 months, you had major implications on 3 of the more high-profile sports on campus. 2 weeks in, less than 2 weeks in, you hire Nicole Woods as your women's head basketball coach. Talk to me about that decision, and talk to me about that person who's running your women's basketball program.
Yeah, John, that was job one. And I knew that, coming through December, January as the recruiting process, and really me understanding what was first up for me when I came into this role was, we had an interim coach in the women's basketball side. So ultimately, we were going to have to make a hire. We were going to have to put a permanent person in there. And so, that process started in March. I think back, I was doing Zoom interviews with candidates, in my office at home in Connecticut, because the minute I hit the ground running in Wilmington, we had in-person interviews that first week, made a hire. Really, I think it was day 6 for me was to hire Nicole. And, a lot goes into hiring a coach. For me, I needed to get educated on where the program was. So I asked a lot of questions when I came on my interview specific to women's basketball. What was, where we are, where have we been, and ultimately, where can we go? And so, a lot of questions with administration, a lot of questions with student athletes. We had several Zoom meetings, remote, just talking to the team, talking to the young ladies. Well, what do you want to see in a head coach? And then you go through the process of recruiting the very, very best. Nicole stuck out to me. I'm trying to think of the order, but she was relatively quick when we started talking to head coaches. She might have been like 2 or 3. And it became immediately clear to me and to us that she was going to be a strong candidate for us. And we started to compare other people to her. And that was really the way that we started the process and saying, like, well, then, Nicole is probably someone that we need to zero in on and start to get to know her a little bit. And all the things, John, that I asked her in year 1, she's done. Stabilize the program. We had a lot of turnover, in the coaching ranks and in the roster, obviously the previous 4 or 5 years leading up to it. So we needed to stabilize the program. We needed to bring some values into there. We needed to bring some core beliefs. We needed to bring a really dynamic leader who had ties to the region, ties to North Carolina. That was really, really important to me. A recruiter, she was the recruiting coordinator for Charlotte's women's basketball, and obviously she was a huge part of their success for 10 years. And what really sold me on obviously all these things was in asking around about her. She could have been a head coach prior to me offering her the job. The cycle before that. She could have been a head coach at any time, and she was really picky and choosy to which job, which institution, which job she was going to jump into. And that resonated with me because I feel that way leaving UConn. I felt that way leaving LSU, and we weren't, going to take the next job just to take the next job. We were going to be picky and choosy and pick that next right opportunity. And that really resonated with me. And again, she's done everything right that I've asked her to do. We have a full roster now. She attacked the portal like I knew she would.
Yep.
I think, John, it's been 4 or 5 years since we've had a full roster. And so they're working hard. They had a great summer. Obviously as we get into the fall, they're working every day and in the gym. And, I think we're going to see a much different team in year 2 with Coach Woods than we did the first year.
Not long after that, you extended Coach Siddle's contract. And then in September, you extended Randy Hood's contract. 2 guys who have buy-in from the players, 2 guys well respected in this community, and frankly, 2 guys who, if you want some continuity, in John Evans's opinion, you keep them around, you're going to continue to have success. I thought those were 2 really important moves, keeping those high-profile coaches, buy-in coaches on the UNCW campus.
John, this job, there's a lot of important things that I do, and I think one of the ones right at the top of the list is hiring coaches, because that has an immediate impact on everything involving the student athlete experience, right? Top to bottom. You name it, that is the way to either, fix a problem if you need to go in a different direction, or again, to stabilize a program, or even keep growing as the program is ascending. So the 2 people that you mentioned, are critical to what we've got going on here, and Coach Siddle and Coach Hood. And, our success in both of those programs are a direct result of their leadership. And so, keeping them around keeping them around, making sure they felt wanted, making sure they felt secure, making sure that they know that what they're doing for us is valued was very, very important. Because obviously those 2 programs are very, very important to us. and hopefully keeping them around as long as we can.
What surprised you the most since you sat in that chair for the first time?
John, yeah, I'll say this. Probably the thing that surprised me the most was how really honest and accurate the chancellor was about this job and what they wanted. And what I mean by that is I really haven't, in a year and a half, I really haven't had that. Man, I wish they were a little more honest, or I wish they were like, they didn't talk about this during the interview, or they kind of just glazed over this. And when you got here, it was like, oh wow, that was a problem, or this. So, all throughout the conversations I had with the chancellor, the search committee, they were absolutely honest about what this place needed, what we were really, really good at, what we could improve in. So that's comforting for me when I come in. I got a pretty good landscape or a pretty good idea what the landscape is in terms of, stepping in day one and being productive. And so, everything about this place was as advertised, the community, the leadership. I'll be honest with you, these jobs are so important to have alignment with the chancellor and what his vision is for athletics. And he has been as supportive of, as during the interview process, he's telling me he's going to be supportive and here's what we're going to do. The 18 months, he's been spot on with everything. And I can't thank him enough for, all he's done for us and me since my arrival here. And so, to answer your question, I mean, there really hasn't been that, wow, I wish I would have known this coming in, right. To be more prepared. But honestly, I thought they did a great job of really communicating to me what the job needed when I got here in March.
You're on the cusp of basketball season starting again. The schedule comes out. You have 18 regular season games at home. We talked earlier about the customer experience, the fan experience. How big a deal is that to have more home regular season games than you've ever had before in 2024-25, to give those fans the opportunity to reach out, shake the coach's hand, fist bump a player as they're walking up? That's got to be a huge win for you.
Yeah, and it was something that, as soon as I got hired and talking to Coach Siddle, that was something that he thought we needed to improve in, and just the number of home games we have here, and for all the right reasons, right? I mean, we're a difficult team in a lot of ways, but we're really difficult to beat and Trask, and so we need to play as many games as we can from a competitive standpoint. We want to play in front of our fans. We want to provide value as a season ticket holder. So the more opportunities for folks to come out and see us, that was something that we got to work on right away. And so, obviously we have a holiday tournament here. That was something too, and talking to Coach was really, really important. These are all over the country. You talk about the tournament in Charleston, you talk about the tournament in Myrtle Beach. We played in Fort Myers last year, and he said, why can't we do that here? And I said, well, let's give it a shot. And so we brought 3 other really, really competitive teams in. They'll be here during the holiday season. That Wednesday, Friday, Saturday of Thanksgiving, we'll play games in Trask. All 4 of us, obviously us included, won 20 games last year. We've got teams that were in the NCW tournament. So, not only providing the number of home games, but also bringing in really, really competitive programs. And Coach Siddle, he's really interested in playing really, really good opponents, period. And, he's interested in making sure that we're ready to go for the CAA tournament. And part of playing, really, really good competition early on is a part of that.
What's your long-term goal for the athletic programs at UNCW, Mike? I mean, it's hard to bottom line it, but I'll be successful at UNCW if blank, fill in the blank.
Yeah, I think, on the surface level, I think if you come on our campus, I think, there's a want to improve facilities. I think that's something that, we've been tackling the first 18 months, but that takes time. That takes a lot of planning. It takes a lot of strategizing. Obviously, it takes a lot of fundraising and funding and those types of things. And so that's not something that obviously you can just wave your magic wand and all of a sudden you have a brand new facility. And so that is something that we're working on every single day. But in the meantime, John, it's providing as much value that we possibly can. And what I mean by that is, we're not the most important thing here at UNCW. I know that, right? We are an academic institution, but we're the front porch. And we're really a way for us to engage the community, to help recruit students, for people to understand what it is like to be involved with the UNCW from a branding standpoint, from an enrollment standpoint. We play a huge role in all that, and that's something that I take a lot of pride in. And we are the front porch. I certainly understand that, but also too, we have a responsibility to make sure the front porch is clean, the front porch is painted, the front porch is inviting. And those are all things that we take very, very seriously. So, those are things that we talk about every single day. We're also really intentional with the student athlete experience. We want to bring people here to have a transformational experience during their time here. We want them to be able to compete at the highest level for a championship. We want them to have a wonderful experience holistically here on campus in this community. We want them to earn a degree and go out and be career readiness. And so all those things is the full package that we talk about as it relates to the student athlete experience. And those are things that, we tackled every single day, right? Whether it's hiring our first mental health care professional, in June, that was a huge component of that. We just hired another academic counselor to sit in and help with, obviously career readiness. And so those are things that, again, there's things that we tackle every single day throughout athletics here.
I imagine just by hearing your voice and by hearing the way you talk about the program and the way you talk about things, it's fun to be the AD at UNCW, isn't it?
I love my job. Yeah, I first of all, it's a blessing to be here. It's humbling to serve this institution, our student athletes, our staff, our constituents. This is a wonderful job, and we're very blessed to be here. But yeah, I'm energized every time I wake up. You know what I mean? And every time I step foot on this campus, every time I come in this office, every time I'm around our students, our staff, our donors, it's just energizing, and that's that's a great thing to do. To realize, it's a job and it's part of my career, but I really don't feel that way at all. I just feel like it's very purposeful, and this is what I should be doing. And again, it's a very positive way of looking at my career.
Yeah, you're around a lot of engaging people every day. And just in the relationships that I've built with Coach Hood, Coach Siddle, Coach Woods, some of the other coaches that have been there and have now retired after great careers, it's an engaging place. And to be the leader of that athletics department has to be a lot of fun on a daily basis. So it's neat to hear you talk that way.
John, we've got so much positivity and momentum here. Whether you talk about GPA, we had a 3.4 GPA last semester. All of our teams were over 3.0. We did 5,000 community service hours in this community. Our student athletes did. So think about how impactful we are in the community. Obviously, we talk about we want people to come to our games and support our student athletes and buy tickets and et cetera. But how do we go into the community and thank people for that? And again, that's a huge part of who we are and what we're trying to do is being in the community as much as possible.
Well, it's a lot of fun to watch everything that's going on over there with the athletic department at UNCW. Mike Oblinger, athletic director, about 18 months on the job. We appreciate your time today. Thanks for joining us. And we, of course, wish you guys all the best over there across town.
John, thanks for having me, and great to spend time with you.
A big thank you to Mike Oblinger for sparing some of his valuable time to join us for this week's podcast interview. As we talked about in the interview, they're getting ready to start brand new basketball seasons at UNCW, and I've put links inside this story on our website and our news app where you can get ticket information for the men's and the women's basketball program. Now, before we go, I'd like to ask you a favor. Please follow or subscribe to the One-on-One with John Evans podcast on whatever app you use to listen to your favorite shows. And if you'd be so kind, please leave us a rating or a review. We do care what you think about our interviews, and the more feedback we get from friends like you, the higher we'll be listed on the apps, the better chance we'll have of bringing in even more new listeners. I'm John Evans. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of One-on-One.